It doesn't start with shouting. It doesn't start with violence. It starts with a question, not a threat, not a command, just a quiet, well-timed question that slips past your defenses and lands somewhere deeper where your instincts live. Don't you trust me? Why would I lie? Can you keep a secret? You've heard them before. You've probably answered them without thinking, without blinking, because they don't sound like traps. They sound familiar, harmless, human. But here's the truth. Questions can be weapons. And the most effective ones don't stab. They disarm. While you're focused on preserving peace, keeping relationships intact, avoiding offense, someone else is quietly testing how much of yourself you're willing to give away. They're not looking for answers. They're looking for submission. Not in your body, but in your mind. In that quiet moment where you override your gut because you don't want to seem cold. Where you choose harmony over truth. Where you begin to rewrite your own memory just to avoid conflict. This is how it begins. Not with betrayal, but with internal erosion. One question at a time. One silence at a time. One doubt at a time. And the worst part? You think you're being kind. You think you're keeping the peace. You think you're being wise. But what you're really doing is participating in your own manipulation. Because those questions, they aren't invitations to connect. They're rehearsed. They're strategic. They're designed to bypass your logic and aim straight at your wiring. And you know how you can tell? You walk away feeling off. Not angry, not hurt, just like something slipped past you. You replay the moment. You can't explain it, but you know something's wrong, and you stay quiet. That silence, that single moment where you could have asked, could have said no, could have walked away, that's where the first thread is pulled. The fabric doesn't tear right away. It unravels slowly, almost politely, until one day you realize you've been agreeing to things you never said yes to. You've been keeping secrets you never wanted to carry. You've been doubting your own memory, your own perception, your own sanity. And it all started with a question. A simple question, asked by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. You didn't lose your clarity in one moment. You leaked it. Gradually. Softly. Voluntarily. That's the danger. Manipulation isn't always hostile. Sometimes it's gentle. So gentle, you don't even know it's happening. But today, you will. Because there are 5 questions, 5 common phrases that manipulative people use again and again. Not to connect with you, but to control you. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling uneasy, confused, or guilty without knowing why, this isn't paranoia. It's a pattern. And the first step to protecting your mind is learning how to recognize the shape of the weapon. Let's begin with the first one. A question that sounds like a plea, but feels like a noose. Don't you trust me? It always starts in a soft tone, not an accusation, not a shout, just a sigh, maybe even a smile. And then, don't you trust me? It lands like a question, but it's not. It's a test. A loaded sentence designed to flip the spotlight off them and onto you. You're no longer examining what they did. You're defending how you feel. It sounds innocent, even hurt. But look closer. This isn't about trust. It's about silencing doubt. And it works. Not because you're gullible, but because you're human. We are wired to seek connection, not confrontation. to assume the best, to preserve harmony, especially with people we love, work with, or have history with. So when someone throws this line at you, especially when you're already uncertain, you pause. You ask yourself, am I being unfair? Am I reading too much into this? Maybe I should let it go. And just like that, the conversation shifts. Now you're the problem. You're the one who's suspicious. You're the one who's making things awkward. It's emotional blackmail at its quietest. Because this question doesn't invite clarity. It demands compliance. And if you're someone who's been taught to value peace over truth, you fold. You silence your gut. You backpedal. You apologize for even asking. But let's be honest. What kind of person demands trust in a moment that calls for transparency? Trust isn't a shortcut to avoid accountability. It's the result of showing up truthfully, consistently, openly, especially when it's hard. So when someone uses, "Don't you trust me?" as a shield against basic questions, what they're really saying is, "I don't want to explain myself. I want you to stop asking." That's not intimacy. That's manipulation. Let me show you how subtle this can get. You raise a concern, a detail that doesn't add up, a timeline that shifted. They don't answer. They look hurt. Maybe they say, "Wow, after everything I've done for you," suddenly you're on the defensive. And if you back down, if you let guilt override clarity, you don't just lose that moment. You train yourself to abandon your instincts every time someone plays that emotional note. That's how control is established. Not through aggression, but repetition. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus wrote, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit." What he meant was simple. Manipulation requires permission. It needs your silence, your hesitation, your fear of conflict. And here's the paradox. The more kind-hearted you are, the more eager to trust, to forgive, to smooth things over. The more vulnerable you are to this question, because your conscience becomes the leash they pull. But there's another way. You don't need to fight. You don't need to explain. You don't need to argue. You just need one phrase. Calm, clear, undeniable. Trust is earned by clarity, not demanded by guilt. That sentence breaks the game. It shifts the burden back to where it belongs. Son, actions, not assumptions. It tells the other person, "I'm not your opponent, but I'm also not your pawn." It doesn't escalate. It doesn't accuse, but it refuses to be silenced. And that's what Stoicism trains for. Not just the courage to speak, but the clarity to stay calm when someone tries to twist your truth. So the next time someone asks, "Don't you trust me?" pause, breathe, and remember, the people who deserve your trust never have to ask for it. It's one of the oldest tricks in the book. A line so smooth, so casual, it barely feels like manipulation. Why would I lie? It sounds reasonable. It sounds like a defense. But it's a trap disguised as logic. Because that question isn't seeking clarity. It's not an invitation to investigate. It's a command to stop thinking. And, too often, it works. Especially on people who don't like assuming the worst. Especially on people who try to give others the benefit of the doubt. Which, ironically, is exactly who liars look for. Not the cynics. Not the skeptics. But the empathetic. The ones who hesitate to doubt because they don't want to offend. Let me show you how this plays out. A man sits across from an insurance agent. The agent is confident, smiling, seasoned. He says, "I've been in this business for 30 years. No tricks, no hidden fees, just transparency." The client asks a simple, cautious questions just to be sure. The agent leans back, smirks, then delivers the line, "Why would I lie? I built my whole career on trust." And right there, without realizing, it's the client who feels rude, suspicious, ungrateful for asking a question he had every right to ask. So he lets it go. He signs. Weeks later, the fine print hits like a slap. And the damage, it's not just financial, it's personal. Because he knew. His instincts fired, but he let a calm voice and a clever phrase override his gut. That's the danger of this question. It shifts the burden of proof from the speaker's honesty to your willingness to doubt. And the more credible someone appears, the more charming, the more experienced, the more well-spoken, the easier it is to fall for it. But here's the Stoic truth. People don't always lie for logical reasons. They lie for emotional ones, for advantage, for ego, or sometimes just to see if they can. And if you're waiting for the right motive before you trust your instincts, you've already given up your judgment. That's not kindness. That's self-abandonment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." He wasn't just reminding us to live with integrity. He was reminding us what to measure in others. Not charisma, not reputation, not the illusion of credibility. Measure what's true. Now, here, in this moment. Facts, evidence, action. Because truth doesn't need to defend itself with smooth words. And honesty doesn't flinch when questioned. But deception? Deception relies on that pause. That moment where you feel like the aggressor, just for wanting to verify what should be obvious. So the next time someone says, "Why would I lie?" don't answer it. Don't explain. Don't justify your suspicion. Just breathe and ask, "Can you show me? Can I verify this myself?" And if that question makes them uncomfortable, you've already learned more than they wanted you to. Because real honesty doesn't hide behind rhetorical questions. It stands naked in the light. And if they can't stand there with you, they don't deserve your trust. Let this truth settle deep. People who are honest don't mind being questioned. Only liars do. It doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like intimacy. A quiet tone, a glance over the shoulder, and then, can you keep a secret? At first, it flatters you, makes you feel chosen, trusted, like you're being invited into a private circle. But underneath that soft invitation hides something far more dangerous. A trap. Because this isn't just a secret. It's a contract. One you never read. One you never signed. But one they now expect you to honor no matter the cost. Why is this so effective? Because it doesn't appeal to your logic. It targets your loyalty. It whispers, "We're in this together now. You're on my side, right?" To question me now would be betrayal. It bypasses your moral compass and aims straight for your need to be seen as loyal, as good, as someone who doesn't cause problems. But here's the truth Stoicism forces you to face. Not every secret deserves to be kept. Not every whisper deserves your silence. Let me paint the picture. You're at work. Someone you barely know pulls you aside and lowers their voice. "I probably shouldn't say this," they begin, "but I trust you." Then comes the reveal. The boss is mishandling funds, or someone's cheating the system. You're stunned. You didn't ask for this, but now you're holding a ticking bomb wrapped in the illusion of trust. And before you can process what you should do, you've already nodded. Because the moment they said, "Can you keep a secret?" they put the weight on your shoulders, not theirs. Now it's your conscience that's on trial. And if you speak up, you're the betrayer. You broke the bond. You were disloyal. That's the power of false intimacy. It makes silence feel like morality. But what it really is control. The Stoics understood this well. Seneca once wrote, "No evil propensity of the human heart is so powerful that it may not be subdued by discipline." And that's what this requires. Discipline. To pause before you nod. To ask yourself, does this secret align with my values? Am I being asked to protect a truth or hide a lie? If the answer doesn't sit right, you owe no one your silence. Let that be clear. Loyalty is earned through integrity, not whispered complicity. People who manipulate with secrets aren't building closeness. They're building leverage. They don't want connection. They want insurance against truth, against consequences, against being held accountable. And the moment you carry their secret, you carry their burden. You carry their guilt. You carry their shield. But Stoicism offers you a sharper path, not to lash out, not to expose needlessly, but to remain anchored in principle. The discipline to say, "I need to understand what I'm being asked to protect," or simply, "If it's wrong, I can't hold it." That is strength. That is moral clarity. Because there's a difference between confidentiality and complicity. And if someone tries to collapse that boundary, it's not friendship. It's manipulation. So the next time someone asks, "Can you keep a secret?" Pause. Look past the tone. And ask yourself, am I being trusted or trapped? Because once you say yes, they're not the only one hiding something anymore. You are too. There's a moment, right after you say something true, something difficult, something you weren't supposed to know, where the person across from you doesn't look surprised. They don't even deny it. They just ask, "Who told you that?" And suddenly, the room shifts. The tension's no longer about the truth. It's about the leak, the source, the betrayal of some imagined code. But don't be fooled. This question isn't curiosity. It's control. It's a sleight of hand, a redirection, a way to shift the spotlight away from their behavior and onto your alliances. Because if they can make you feel like you crossed a line just by knowing what you know, you won't push any further. You'll spend your energy defending how you found out, instead of demanding. They explain what you found out. And that's the point. This tactic is especially common in people with something to hide. They don't want to address facts. They want to investigate you, not the substance, just the source. Because if they can discredit the messenger, they don't have to answer the message. Let's take a high-profile example. Lance Armstrong. For years, a cycling legend, a symbol of resilience. And yet, the rumors grew. Whispers of doping, of manipulation, of deception on a global scale. Whenever confronted, did he address the evidence? Number. He attacked the accusers, questioned their motives, asked, "Who's saying this? Why now? What do they want?" And for years it worked. People hesitated. People doubted. People defended him, not because the facts were clear, but because the fog was thick. That's the danger of this question. It creates fog. It turns a moral question into a loyalty test. And here's where most people fail the test. They think defending the truth means defending the person who revealed it. But Stoicism cuts through that illusion. Epictetus said, "Seek not the favor of the multitude. It is seldom got by honest and lawful means." What he meant was simple. When truth is at stake, popularity is irrelevant. The moment someone makes it about who spoke, instead of what was said, they've already abandoned the truth. Because truth doesn't need to be protected by secrecy. It stands on its own, regardless of who whispered it. So what do you do when someone says, "Who told you that?" You don't engage the diversion. You don't name names. You don't justify knowing. You say, "That's not the question. The question is whether it's true." That one sentence will expose everything. If they deflect again, if they get defensive, if they try to spin the story, you already have your answer. Because honest people address truth. Dishonest people manage perception. And once you see that clearly, you're no longer a participant in the drama. You're an observer, rooted, calm, unmoved. That's what Stoicism trains for. Not just to spot lies, but to see through distractions, to stay focused on what matters. So the next time someone tries to turn your curiosity into guilt, your clarity into betrayal, pause. And remember, if the first thing they care about is who told you, they already know what you said is true. Gaslighting doesn't scream. It whispers, calm, measured, almost caring. And it sounds like this. Don't you remember? It doesn't feel like a lie. It feels like you're the one forgetting. And in that single moment of hesitation, they take control. You pause. You scan your memory. You try to recall. But they sound so sure, so detailed, so calm. They even remember what you were wearing, where you were sitting, what you said. And you start to doubt. Not them. Yourself. That's the true cost of gaslighting. It's not about defending a lie. It's about reprogramming your reality. This tactic doesn't attack your logic. It attacks your sanity. And if repeated long enough, it works. You stop asking questions. You stop trusting your memory. You defer to their version of events. Not because it makes more sense, but because they sound more certain. And certainty, as we've learned, is the most dangerous mask for manipulation. Let me give you an example. You're in a relationship. A decision is made big, life-altering. A move, a purchase, a shift in plans. You're shocked. You don't recall ever agreeing. But when you raise concern, they look confused, even hurt. They say, "We talked about this. You were on board. You even said it was a great idea." You freeze. You dig through memory. And they wait calm, confident, while you second-guess your own mind. That's the moment they win. Because now, it's not about what happened. It's about whether you're stable enough to remember. Over time, this corrodes everything. You stop speaking up. You stop keeping score. You start surrendering not just decisions, but identity, because what's left when you no longer trust your own memory? Gaslighting doesn't just make you question the past. It makes you question your ability to perceive anything clearly. And once that happens, you become dependent on them for the truth, for your version of events, for your sense of right and wrong. But Stoicism offers a way out, not by fighting fire with fire, but by returning to the only thing you truly control, your mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In gaslighting, that principle becomes life-saving. You don't need to convince them you're right. You don't need to argue memories. You don't even need to win. You need to anchor. In documentation, in written records, in inner clarity. When memory feels shaky, go external. Notes, journals, emails, conversations you trust. Don't rely on emotional confidence. Rely on evidence. And if no proof exists, trust what gaslighting tries to steal: your gut. Because when someone uses, "Don't you remember?" as a tool to rewrite decisions, blur responsibility, or erase their own missteps, that's not a memory lapse. It's a power play. So the next time someone questions your recall like it's defective, pause and remind yourself, I don't have to remember it the way they do. I only have to stay true to what sits right in me. Gaslighting only works when you hand over your perception to someone else's confidence. But confidence isn't truth. And conviction isn't clarity. Your memory might not be perfect, but it's yours. And it's not up for negotiation. Now you've seen it. How lies don't always come with raised voices. How control often comes dressed as concern. How the most dangerous people don't argue. They ask. They ask softly, strategically, repeatedly. And each time, it's not just information they're seeking, it's compliance. Not with your body, with your judgment, your silence, your self-doubt. Because that's how manipulation works in the real world. Not through brute force, through erosion. One question at a time. Don't you trust me? Silences your suspicion. Why would I lie? Makes you question your own clarity. Can you keep a secret? Binds you to their guilt. Who told you that? Diverts you from the truth. Don't you remember? Destabilizes your reality. None of these lines are loud, but each one is lethal in its own way. And when they're used together, they form a system, a quiet algorithm of control that turns your instincts into liabilities and your empathy into ammunition against yourself. But here's what the Stoics knew, and what you must remember now. The battle isn't between you and them. It's between your clarity and their chaos. You don't have to fight to win. You don't have to react. You don't even have to respond. You just have to remain rooted, calm, aware. Because every time someone tries to twist your perception, you have one responsibility: to hold the line inside yourself. That line may be blurry now. It may have been crossed before. But the moment you reclaim it, even silently, you reclaim your mind. And that's not a small thing. That's everything. Because when trust has been broken, when doubt has crept in, when your own thoughts feel suspect, you need more than just answers. You need a center that cannot be moved. That's what Stoicism gives you. Not positivity, not protection. Clarity, the ability to see what's real without flinching, to feel what hurts without collapsing, to speak the truth without apology. And if that means walking away from someone who can't handle your clarity, so be it. Your peace is not their responsibility. It's your obligation. So if these 5 questions ever come for you again, you'll know what they are. Not conversations, but contracts, silent deals. And every one of them asks you to trade your perception for their comfort. You don't owe them that. You never did. So, the next time it happens, pause, breathe, and remember, you are no one's pawn, and your mind is not up for negotiation. If this message struck a nerve, if it clarified something in you, then stay close to this space. Because in a world full of noise, we sharpen clarity. And in a culture that rewards silence, we train for truth. Subscribe, not because I said so, but because something in you knows. This is the work you're ready to do. Quiet, clear, unshakable.